Burns for some SEC burning questions. Who better to discuss this with than Peter, who made the trip for us? And we talked about it a second ago with Nick Saban out, Kalen DeBoer in. Barrie's burning question number one. Does the show go on without Nick Saban at Alabama?
It's going to be so weird at Media Days not seeing him there. Right? He's the godfather of the SEC. Him not being there, I'll tell you this, it's going to look the same for Alabama fans for the first 3 weeks. You know who they got week 4, Harry? They got Georgia.
That's right.
Coming into Tuscaloosa, and hell hath no fury like a Georgia football team and Kirby Smart that is scored right now, because they know that Nick Saban's been that hurdled over the last couple of years. But I will say this, as tough as it's going to be for Alabama to replace Nick Saban, I think they're in a better spot because Nick Saban was there, the guy that coached college football 2.0, before the transfer portal, before NIL. I don't think he'd like to play that game. Kalen DeBoer, Harry, is ready for that transition. Alabama's actually going to be in a better spot going forward.
And I love Kalen DeBoer. What he has been able to do at Washington in 2 years, bringing him to a national powerhouse. He's coming to Alabama, and I think what's important for him is to put your own twang on things. I think what a lot of coaches mess up when they're replacing legends is trying to do so much of what the last coach did. Put your own twang on it. Get those guys to buy into your culture and do things your way.
I would say, with respect to Nick Saban, what you said about him, replaced a legend. You never want to be the guy that replaces the legend, but because it's a different era in college football,
true,
what the legend built necessarily isn't the playing field that everybody else is on now in the sport.
Think about what he did with Michael Penix over at Washington. If he could do the same thing with Jalen Milroe, sky's the limit for that.
Yeah, and I think it's important to know that they have the quarterback, so you have the most important piece at Alabama. You can try to make everything else fit.
All right, burning question number 2. Harry, I'll go with you on this one. Can Texas win the SEC in its first season in the league?
I know a lot of people down south don't want to hear this, but yes, they can.
Are you saying Texas is back?
Texas is back, baby. Let me throw up my horns. And what's great about them is that they're 2 running back deep, they're 2 quarterback deep, they're returning 4 starting offensive linemen, but Steve Sarkisian is that dude as a play caller. They lost 3 of their top receivers. They replaced them with 3 transfers. Defensively, I think we're going to see some of those young guys who made a splash last year be more of a major role in what they do on the defensive side of the ball. I like Andrew Makuba coming over from Clemson in their secondary at the safety position. So I really like Texas. I think it's going to be Georgia and Texas in the SEC championship.
They got a kid named Ryan Wingo who's going to be an incredible freshman. I was there in spring. I looked at them. The way that they get off the bus is exactly like those Nick Saban teams in the mid-2010s. In the same way that they looked at Georgia over the last couple of years. Sark knows the league. They're in good shape.
I'm going to give you a name. Silas Bolden, transfer Oregon State on the Texas offense. What Sark's going to do with him is going to be something to behold.
It's not about the size of the dog. It's about the fight of the dog.
People ignored him because he was in the Pacific Northwest.
Is it young Harry Douglas? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
A little something.
Watch out for Silas Bolden. By the way, Isaiah Bond comes over from Alabama. They are loaded at Texas. All right, burning question number 3. Peter, I'm going back to you.
Yep.
We know it's a Georgia league. It's a Georgia dominant league. Who will join Georgia from the SEC in the college football playoff?
All right, so I got 8 teams. No, I'm just joking. It ain't going to be that. But it might be 3 or 4 coming up this year. We've seen that in the past. I think Texas is going to be one of those teams.
Okay.
Ole Miss, of course. LSU if they get by USC. But this is a team that I'm looking into right now is the Missouri Tigers. They're coming off an 11-win season. And Harry, you talking about what Eli Drinkowitz did, the same thing that Lane Kiffin said. Hey, this is our time. They've got the easiest schedule in the SEC. They're going to be an FBI favorite in 11 of the 12. And that 12th game is an Alabama team that we got question marks. Luther Burden III going to win the Biletnikoff. This guy is a real deal.
Yeah, I like Missouri. Now, the only concerns I have, they lost a lot of, guys on defense. How are they going to be able to replace those guys? But I think with an easier schedule, it allows you to, be able to get over that hump a little bit.
So to be clear, right here, right now, get up on, July 12th. I'm going to clip this off. It's going to live in perpetuity. How many teams from the SEC make the playoff? This is the vote.
4 or 5.
Oh, 5. That's the ACC guy that's saying that. I just want to make sure we clip that. The ACC guy is saying 5. I'm not going to go that far. I think it is 4.
That'll help the SEC bias narrative.
Now, we're going to run that all next week on the SEC Media Days. That's my man right there.
Somewhere Sankey's sitting there and see, I told you, 12-team playoff. That's for us. Burns is coming back. We'll do some Big Ten coming up in just a bit. And we're 50 days away from the first Big Ten Saturday. ESPN bet has Ohio State as a favorite to win the conference. Ryan Day brought in a number of impact transfers. Will Howard, the quarterback, safety Caleb Downs, Quinshon Judkins, another one. No conference bigger than the Big Ten, which now has 18 teams after adding Oregon, UCLA.
How many?
It's ridiculous. And Washington. Huskies are coming off a national title game and a loss to Michigan. Speaking of the Wolverines, Jim Harbaugh back in the NFL led his alma mater to an undefeated season and a national championship. Michigan, the 3-time defending Big Ten champion, beating the Buckeyes in each of those seasons. So those are where we have the 3 burning questions, Big Ten edition, as we welcome back Peter Burns to talk a little college football with he and Harry Douglas. Look, the burning questions are there, and we'll go to Ohio State in a minute. But the national champion is Michigan.
Yep.
Jim Harbaugh's gone. Sharon Moore was the interim last year for a bit. Now he's the head coach. Barry's burning question number 1. Does the show go on without Jim Harbaugh?
Yeah, the show goes on. It's not going to be a blockbuster. It's going to be a flop. I mean, you know who's not walking through that door? J.J. McCarthy's not walking through that door. You know who's not walking through that door? 12 other NFL draft picks that are going to be playing on Sunday. You know who's not walking on that door? Connor Stallions. He actually might be in disguise right there. But all of that has changed. And you go back and look, Harry, you start looking at this schedule right now. Ohio State, okay, they're not as good as Ohio State. They're not as good as Oregon. They're going to get thumped by Texas when the Longhorns go up there in week 2. This is likely a 4-loss team for Michigan up there in the Big House.
I think the most important piece, too, is the quarterback position. Alex Orji, is he going to be the guy from Michigan to be able to, step up to the plate? J.J. McCarthy is hard to replace a guy that lost 1 game as a starter. This is a defending national champion, but like you mentioned, they have a ton of guys that they lost to the National Football League. So Sharon Moore, how's he going to be able to, continue to build these guys and count on the young players to step up in the places that they lost these veteran guys?
But they need Damian Woody on that offensive line. They lost 4 of their 5 guys on the offensive line, and that's why they were thumping people.
Well, and that's their identity as well, right? Physicality, imposing their
They want to win the Joe Moore Award every single year.
Mm-hmm.
Look, this is not an indictment on Sharon Moore, who's going to be a really, really good coach.
And which who did a great job when he had to replace Jim Harbaugh as well.
But
he was also on cruise control as well too. They didn't let J.J. McCarthy throw more than like 3 passes in those games.
Well,
it was just like don't mess
get
it up.
mad at Sharon Moore
He was
because
a school
his
bus
team
driver
was
last
the most
year.
physical than any other team.
He's got Donovan Edwards coming back. I mean, that's going. That'll work out.
If you're into those great game-changing running backs, yeah.
Look, they didn't throw a pass in the second half.
They didn't have to.
Yeah. They run the ball. All right, so on the complete opposite end of this spectrum, with the talent that exited Michigan, Ohio State is as loaded as any team in the country. Barry's burning question number 2, Peter Burns. Is it now or never for Ryan Day? And that means win a national championship.
Pass or fail, right? I mean, that's the only thing. It's thumbs up, thumbs down. It's Russell Crowe in The Gladiator when they look at him, right? You spend $10 million in NIL and probably even more than that. Those guys that spent that money, Harry, they want a return on their investment. And right now, there's a reason why Chip Kelly at one point says, oh, you know what, I'm a head coach at UCLA. I think I'll be an offensive coordinator and might hang around here in Columbus just in case Ryan Day doesn't get this thing done and doesn't end up beating Michigan and doesn't win a national championship.
So to keep your movie parlance going, you're saying like the Yoda's going to take down the Jedi? I mean,
smart.
I mean, because you've been going movies all morning.
Yeah.
For you, now or never for Ryan Day, who's got the best team, I think, in the country in terms of talent, top to bottom.
100%, and you can't lose to the team in Michigan in which you lost to the last few years. I'm excited to see Jeremiah Smith, right? We talk about Ohio State and all these phenomenal wide receivers, and yes, they have 2 great backs, maybe the best tandem in college football, but I want to see what Jeremiah Smith is going to be able to do, the phenomenal freshman that they have at the wide receiver position.
Quinshon Judkins, too, the kid from Ole Miss.
With Travion Henderson.
Caleb Downs defensively.
It's now or never. Like,
Listen,
if you don't win this, it's like the Dodgers, or it's like you don't want to be the Mets.
Yes.
Where you spend all that money and all of a sudden you end up being a disaster in a dumpster fire.
If I may, would you like to play a little either or with this one?
I'm in.
And using Ryan Day as the jumping off one. Who's under more pressure this year? Ryan Day with what he has to do at Ohio State, or Kalen DeBoer with what he has to inherit with what Nick Saban did?
I mean, there's no doubt that Ryan Day is under the most pressure of any coach in college football, and I might say even any coach in football. You know, NFL as well, along with Mike McCarthy. But that's, I mean, Swallows returning to Capistrano there. But yeah, Day has to win this. DeBoer, I think he goes into a conference in the SEC now with Texas and Oklahoma. It's going to be a little bit tougher. There will be a learning curve. I think they still lose 3 games this year at Alabama, but you cannot lose 2 games at Ohio State with this roster.
By the way, we said it last. We're going to do a similar question what we did in the SEC because I think you had 5.
6.
You went 4 or 5.
7?
You basically went in
went
and
4 or 5.
All right, and with how many playoff teams will make it from the SEC? I'm going to give you the same Barry's burning question for Ohio State. We believe they are a college football playoff team. They should be. Which Big Ten school or schools will join Ohio State in the college football.
I mean, Dan Lanning, there's a reason why that he said, hey, lock me into Oregon, right? I mean, that's going to be one of those teams. He's got that opportunity. The question is about what's going to go on with Lincoln Riley over at USC. That's why that opener against LSU is so big coming up on that Sunday night in Las Vegas. I don't know. Does Iowa have a pulse on offense? I don't think so. No. Does USC play any defense? I don't think so.
I think the physicality is going to get USC as well.
Well, and so Penn State? I mean, I feel like the top two teams in the SEC and the Big Ten now are pretty much a lock for the college football playoff. Right. So you're going to get at least two. The question is, who's going to be that third team? I think it's Ohio State. I think it's Oregon. Penn State might be that squad.
I have Penn State as well.
Mm-hmm. Look, Penn State.
I agree with Mr. Burns, and I'm not talking about from The Simpsons.
Yeah, no, look. I
appreciate that.
But here's the thing with Penn State in the 12-team college football playoff. It's almost like the 12-team college football playoff was created for
them.
For Penn State.
Yep.
They go 10-2 every year. They lose to Ohio State. They lose to Michigan. 10-2 Penn State this year gets in the college football playoff.
But they also beat up on a really weak Big Ten over the last decade, right? I mean, you go back and look, Illinois, Indiana, Rutgers. I mean, now they've got Come on now.
How dare you talk about the Big Ten with such facial distain?
There is a disdain right there.
It's been awful, yes.
It's been awful, right? But then now you get some big boys that are going to show up, right? Lincoln Riley's offense, you get it. You get, right now you're going to end up having Oregon, which I think is just as talented in that upper tier. So it's a new world. In this college football playoff, we're on the cusp of the greatest season we've had in 20 years.
Give me something.